Hi, I'm Gary Brown. I'm a professor of marketing here at the Woodbury School of Business, and I also run UVU's Marketing Board of Advisors. And as part of that, I like to talk to many of our board members. My guest today, Dana Hathaway, serves as Chief Marketing Officer for Extra Space Storage, certainly a storage company, but also a real estate investment trust traded on the S&P 500 and headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah. With 2,000 plus stores spread across 39 states, EXR is the largest company by revenue that is headquartered in Utah. Dana has built a world-class team of pros who excel in search engine marketing, social media, digital design, email, and customer experience. In short, she exemplifies a truly integrated approach to marketing. Dana is a frequent and generous volunteer here at Utah Valley University as one of the founding members of our Marketing Board of Advisors. Dana, thank you for making some time today.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Dana, we're in an education forum. I want to start just by asking, what did you study in college?
Yeah, so marketing, surprise. I don't know that that's always the case, but I had a few smaller jobs, like stints as I was younger out of high school, part-time working and going to school part-time. And as part of that journey, one job I worked at was for an advertising agency. Downtown Salt Lake, very small, but I was the receptionist, just, trying to earn a little money while I went to school. And it's because of that job that I chose to go into marketing.
Is that agency or remnants of that agency still around? Do you still have friends that you made at that?
Yeah, absolutely. Martha Felt Group was the agency. I think you know, Gary.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of the key players there continued on. It's probably McCann today would be kind of what it evolved into. But I learned a ton there, and not as much as what I learned, but the culture I felt is what told me this is the craft or the area I want to go into because of, man, they were having fun, but they were wicked smart, and they weren't just sitting at their desks staring at the computers all day. There was a lot of energy and activity happening and bouncing in and out of offices and laughter and rolling up the sleeves and getting something really cool and creative done, and clients coming in and cool interactions with the clients and those from the agency that I got to witness as the receptionist, so I wasn't deeply involved or understood exactly what was happening, but it told me enough by being there and watching that I was like, I'm going to at least try this out in school.
You wanted a little of what was happening there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Speaking of education, there is a lot of ongoing dialogue. It's been happening for years. It seems to be kind of at a crescendo right now about the value of a college degree going forward. As a mom, how do you advise your own kids about whether to get a college degree or not? How's that dialogue happen in your home?
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because 5-10 years ago, I would have been like, you are absolutely getting a degree, no ands, if, or buts about it. And I still believe that, but there's a little bit more gray, I guess, of, what are your interests, what's your path, where do you want to go in life, or where do you think you want to go, because that's a journey in of itself. And then let's decide what's right for you. But, I have 3 boys. One's finishing his undergraduate and rolling into a master's, and one's finishing high school and immediately going into college this fall. So the discussion really is, hey, at a bare minimum, we know a college education opens up opportunities, and some because of the degree, and that we could argue whether that will be more or less in the future, but I think it's irrelevant because there is some value there because of the degree. There's also value because of that process of going through college that adds value, the networking, the skills learned. So if you're not going to do that, then I think you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, how else are you going to get that same value? If it's a tech school or a trade school, fine, but there's got to be something that gives you some of that so that you can increase your value and enhance your skills and be marketable for whatever that future holds for you.
does that same conversation happen in the C-suite at Extra Space? Do you guys ever discuss, like, is a non-degreed applicant a viable candidate for any role at Extra Space?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it depends on the area, but there's probably, and maybe not even probably, there are more departments that use a degree as a kind of a vetting layer, if not a requirement.
Yeah.
So I'll give you, I mean, in my team, we probably aren't requiring it for most jobs, but it's a vetting layer of like, okay, they've got this behind them, which is a skill that we value and helps bring them to the top of that resume pile. And our investment team, they probably aren't even touching you unless you've got that degree and maybe a master's, so it just depends on where you are. Engineers, maybe we're not as strict about that degree if the experience is really deep and strong. So it's just going to depend.
Yeah. Core to that whole discussion, you've kind of touched on it, is this question of hard and soft skills. In your own career, how did you distinguish yourself? Was it more leaning into your hard skills, soft skills? Has it changed over time for you?
Yeah. I'm laughing because I'm like, marketing is not hard, surprise. and a lot of what people do isn't that hard. My son, who's graduating from the University of Utah, is a material science engineer, and that sounds crazy hard to me. He tells me all the time, like, Mom, it's not hard. It's how I'm wired. And so I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's hard skills, but that skill usually comes naturally to you, and it's not that hard, right? What is harder usually for people are those soft skills, and so you got to figure out what are your soft skills, which ones are you natural at, which ones are your strengths, and how do you lean into those. And I was fortunate in my career early on to just, I'm going to say, stumble through that, meaning like I just was being who I was. I was just authentic and genuine, and that's how I showed up every day. And I was fortunate that those soft skills I had and was natural at worked for Extra Space, and I would think anywhere. And then later in my career, I was extra fortunate that you have all these tools like strength finders and different ways that you get to understand those skills even better so that you can enhance them and leverage them more. But those soft skills are where that's the reason for me being CMO today. It's not my hard skills. Those certainly, I'm not dismissing those completely. They're part of the story. But if you were to ask anyone at Extra Space on the executive team, why is Dana CMO? The first things they're gonna list is they'll have to do with soft skills.
You say that, and yet I know firsthand you really have established a very high level of sophistication in your digital marketing, the integration of lots of different technology to capture the value that's out there that many organizations bigger than Extra Space have not been able to wire together, so to speak. So hard skills, I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
Come on. Take a victory lap. You guys are very sophisticated at digital marketing.
Sure, and I recognize that and appreciate that. And what I would tell you is the sophistication in the shop that we run is a part of many, right? It's not one individual, myself, that put that plan into place. My skill was some of understanding the digital landscape for sure, but my skill that really built that was my leadership ability to pull the right team members together, help them understand the vision and where we needed to go, and bring that force of calm and confidence with the team every time we hit an obstacle or a road bump or needed to push harder. That's where my soft skills accelerated and made that kind of vision come to life.
Kind of talk about culture there. 5 years in, some executives can take a little credit for culture. When you've been at a place for almost 30 years, you've contributed to the culture. What do you think has been key to forming the culture that you guys have at Extra Space?
Yeah, this is easy. So there's a few things. One is work-life balance. We all recognize that we love extra space, but it's a job, it's a career, and we also have lives outside of that. And that's really important to everyone at the organization, including the executives. So you're going to work hard. We believe in working hard, but that doesn't mean working till 10 o'clock at night. You're going to work smart, and then you're going to get out of there and go do what else you're going to do. And it's a very supportive culture. If people understand, you've got a kid's violin recital or a school play, you're going to be kind of shooed out of the office to go to that. Whereas I've seen firsthand, even with my husband, being at a culture where it was frowned upon, or you weren't able to actually leave unless you were willing to take some of those consequences. So that's been first and foremost, and it allowed me to have the career I've had, which has been grow for a while, then pump the brakes because I'm having 3 boys and I want to be home more. So, take a step back and work part-time, and then, I'm ready to go. Let me get back in the seat and go. So that's been amazing. And then I would say right up there with that is just opportunities for growth. And I don't mean, this is always important for me to stress this, I don't mean promotion after promotion, raise after raise when I say growth and opportunities. I mean, we're getting ready to go public, right? We're a private company. We're getting ready to go public, and we're small and nimble, and people are walking around like, hey, we don't have an investor relations team. Who wants to lean in and help figure this out? And people are raising their hands. Well, you're doing that on top of your existing job. That's okay. We'll figure it out. It'll be fun. You know what? We're going to have to buy extraspace.com because the world just went from physical to digital. Who wants to figure out how to do that? And, crap, we have to know how to build a website. So people are just thrown into these opportunities if they are raising their hand and willing and eager. And that's a cool experience if you're trying to grow in your career, or you're just curious and want to play around with new things. So all that stuff is there constantly, and that makes it fun.
You talk about growth and raising your hand. Have there been any moments in your career where you were challenged in a big way and had to respond, and as a result had some big spurt of professional growth? Or
Yeah. Let me tell 2 very different. One's more hard skill versus soft skill. So I just mentioned buying extraspace.com. That's a true story. Many of these listeners can't imagine that world, but there was a world when the internet didn't exist. And so when I started, it was 100% direct mail and yellow page advertising. And some of these listeners probably don't know what yellow page advertising is. I would say it's Google, but in a physical format. So I managed both of those programs, and our Yellow Page program was about $10 million in spend a year, so it wasn't insignificant. And that's how we got most of our customers. 2 things, direct mail and Yellow Page advertising. And as the internet was starting to come and we were seeing this happen, I hope you can relate, Gary. You're kind of like, I don't know, is this thing real? How do we move from physical to digital world? I don't want to cut off the physical world before I know the digital world works. So I was tasked with figuring that out. Okay, when and how do we drop the Yellow Page advertising and move it to digital? And we'd like to go 100% as quickly as we can, but don't cut off our revenue. So that was really cool to be a part of. I mean, I say I was in charge. Of course, there was a team, but so, like anything, you sit down and figure out okay, how do we do this? What do we have to watch? What are the KPIs we've got to watch to make sure we're not sinking and this is working for us? And then when and how can we accelerate and be the leader on the front end of this digital internet world?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Sticks out as a memory. Another one that was really pivotal for me, more on the soft skills and just probably taking advantages of opportunities when they come to you instead of running from something and letting your fear or your insecurities get in the way. Is we have this annual meeting. So we have facilities that are owned by individuals, and we manage those facilities for them. So kind of like a franchise model, but they really just turn everything over to us, pay us a fee, and we drive the revenue up for them as the sell. So we have an annual conference where we invite all these owners to come those assets are expensive. They're 10 million plus, on average, and oftentimes they have 5, 6, some of them have 20, 30. So it's a big investment. And so we have this annual conference where we fly them somewhere cool, stay at a nice hotel, do kind of the dog and pony show for a couple days and make them feel good about their investment and do some fun activities. So this one's in Mexico, and it's my first time going after coming kind of back in the game a little bit after having kids. And my boss had said, I want you to come down and be on stage with me and take like half of the presentation. So it's like a 40-minute presentation. You take about 20. And so I knew I had plenty of time to prepare and memorize my slides, but I was crazy nervous because it's a pretty big stage, massive screens behind you, lights on you, 200 plus people in the audience, and that can feel scary. I hope most people can relate. So the story starts there, though. So we're on the plane to Mexico, and my boss had gone early to fish and have fun a little bit before the show started.
I feel like I see where this could be going.
And we're on the plane, and the CEO of the company, whose jet we were on, walks back and says, hey, I got a couple surprises, but it's all right because we got the solution all figured out. And I'm totally calm and like, yeah, what's up? And there's like 5 of us on the plane. He's like, well, James is in Mexico fishing, as you know, but he's just been told he's just got a call from his wife and they have a family emergency and he needs to jet and get home. Well, that's my boss who's I'm tag teaming this presentation with. And so I start to panic a little bit, but I'm like, well, surely this like isn't going to impact me. And he's like, so we're good though, because Dana, you're just going to take the other half. And the CEO is telling me this as he's staring into my eyes. And so you have this moment of panic, like, do I tell him no? Do I tell him sure? But he wasn't asking, by the way.
Yeah.
So he said, Danny, you're going to take it. You're going to be fine. And, we'll be there cheering you on. And he turned around and walked back up.
There was no discussion.
No, he walked up to the cockpit, and I was just like deer in the headlights. So the kicker to this is I had my slides memorized, and I had notes in my slides so that on the prompter screen I would see my notes. Well, James, who I admire dearly to this day, like wings it and is super funny and awesome and can just get up there and be a showman,
just
right?
Just a different style.
Yeah, he's awesome. But so we had no notes, and his slides are like multi-layer and the 50 clicks on a slide, and you don't know what's coming. So we land in Mexico, and a coworker who's kind of in charge of these events, I walked up to him and said, look, I'm tapping out of tonight's dinner, opening dinner, and I'll be in my room trying to memorize this presentation. And he was like, yeah, of course, let me know if I can help you. But there was never a like, do you need someone else to do part of this? It was just like, hey, yeah, go, get it figured out. So I go in my room for 3 or 4 hours and just, going nuts. And the stress is off the charts. So the next morning, if I slept at all, I got back up and did the rehearsal again in front of the mirror and walked in there, and my heart was about to come out of my throat. But I can remember these are big deal. Every executive member's there. Our incoming CEO, there was a future CEO change about to happen. We all knew it and knew the players. So our outgoing CEO, who told me I was getting on stage, was there. And the incoming CEO was also there, who I don't know very well. So I've got a reputation to prove to this guy that others know of me and believe in me, but they haven't seen me on stage before. So everyone's there, including all the partners that I have to make them feel good about their investment with us. So I go walking up on stage, and I spend 45 minutes, and I do my thing. And, every minute that goes by, I feel better and better. But what I will never forget is walking off stage and walking down that row, and all the Extra Space team members are kind of at the back. And they're just high-fiving me, and they're like, you absolutely killed it. Like, you couldn't have done better. And it was such a relief, but of course that felt good. And now every time I go up on stage, I remember that and I love it. But it was, hey, I had an opportunity, and I had to realize we have this concept at Extra Space called the inverted pyramid. And if you can picture a pyramid, the top is me, the middle is team, and the bottom is company. And you can put whatever you want in there with a family or whatever.
Sure.
At that moment, I realized, okay, this isn't about me. I have to flip that pyramid, which is what we call the inverted pyramid, and put company on top than team than me. And I had to realize, like, if I can do that and then I can get through this, then I'll reap the benefits too. It will make me stronger, but the team will see me as someone who is willing to take on things, hard things, fun things, whatever. And the company will also see me as that. And that was, I believe, that was a pivotal moment when the executives and senior leaders were like, wow, Dana's got something.
Yeah, that sounds like a moment.
Definite moment.
That was...
I don't want to repeat it, by the way.
No, well, yeah. Well,
But
you do that one time. You step up one time.
Yeah.
Do the work, deliver, and it sounds like subsequent times when you get up to speak, you reflect on that.
Yeah.
I did it then. I got this.
Yeah.
That's a great lesson. That was happening as you were making your way back into a full-time thing after maybe stepping back a bit.
Yeah.
That had to leave a mark with the people who were going, I don't know if Dana's fully in this yet. You were all in at that moment.
Yeah,
That's
right,
awesome.
right.
That's awesome. Hey, reflecting back on the digital stuff and that transition you described that, yes, I was a part of. I used to say to the internet kids, I could paper every inch of this room with direct marketing stuff, and because I did so much of it as part of my career.
Absolutely.
So I was also part of that transition. Yeah. One of the things that happened in that transition was agencies where I worked at the time felt like they had to change the name of the tradition of their. I was at Publicis, a big Paris-based agency. They felt like they had to have a digital arm and bring in, 24-year-olds and like, these are our digital. This is our digital. It was online marketing.
The cool kids,
right?
Yeah.
3% of all marketing spend. This was a 2023 number, if I remember right. 63% is now essentially digital, can be attributed to digital channels and methods, tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly search heavy, as you guys have talked about, but some agencies are still making that distinction. Oh, this is our branding team and this is our digital team. Are we headed to a point where we just call it, instead of digital marketing, it's just marketing, and it's assumed that, if it was 63% in 2023, call it 70% of everybody's budget is going to a digital channel today. At some point, is that distinction immaterial and we just call it marketing? Or is there still an important role in your mind as a practitioner of distinguishing between this is our digital effort and this is a branding effort, or whatever the other discipline may be?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think about marketers on our team or outside of our team as digital or non-digital, so maybe that answers it.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be integrated and understand your customer journey and then match that, whatever that is, right? And but your branding team for sure is touching digital, non-digital, whatever is happening, right? They're influencing all those channels.
Yep.
But you have to, you have to live and breathe by the customer journey. And I think most customer journeys are digital today.
Yes.
So you can't fight that, but how do you maximize that opportunity with the various, disciplines or crafts, whatever you want to call it, that are relevant to your customer base,
Do you feel like, you've just been named the CMO, I think it's been about a month. By the way, it kind of made me happy to see that all the other board members that you serve with here at UVU were some of the first to jump on and say,
it was awesome.
Congratulations, so happy for you. Do you feel like your greatest career accomplishments could still be ahead of you? Or do you feel like you're living the high water mark, or your own personal career high water mark is behind you?
Yeah, I loved seeing this question beforehand and thinking about it because I think there's more to come. And I would say that because I didn't know how far I could take this. I wasn't someone when I entered my career that said, I'm going to be the CMO one day.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when people ask me, like, what do you want to do? I was like, I just want to work and have fun and be challenged. So I didn't focus on titles. I didn't think about titles. It was the work that I cared about. And so the titles are a mark for sure, and something that it gives me pause to sit back and appreciate the journey. It's a reflection of the journey, and not just a personal journey. Some of my favorite moments of celebration have been going home and telling my 3 boys and husband, like, hey, I'm SVP now, or hey, I'm CMO now. And it's a celebration of what we've done together, because I fully believe, you can't do this alone, especially if you've got a family. It's a team effort, if you will. So those are some of my favorite moments of celebration through that journey, but they continue to come, I guess, and it's not just the titles, it's the opportunities, some of which we've talked about already. So it's the acquisition that happened 18 months ago that we had to swallow, or...
That's quite a high water mark right there. That's why it kind of...
Yeah, but it's every year there's a kind of a saying that I just have noticed happens every year, where someone, usually our CEO, says, the best years are still ahead, and that just continues to be true. And so I don't know what it is yet, but there'll be cool things ahead that I'm super excited about.
Extra Space, if I can just ask about that. As a company, you've made storage sexy. Really, as I look
Mission
at
accomplished.
Right? It's kind of thought of as a commodity. If I didn't drive past several of your facilities on my commute, I think I would have just thought of storage as a commodity. If you need something, you just go, get something short term, long term, whatever. You guys somewhere down the line, I don't think it was that far back, made a very deliberate choice to put a lot of design thinking into essentially the customer experience and the way they interface with the product, your facilities. Just talk a little bit about that. How did you guys decide? It represents a massive investment, I have to think, in physical property. How did you guys get to that point where you prioritize that level of spend?
Yeah. It was massive. You were talking millions and millions of dollars over several years. And I think it all starts with the culture, meaning the culture of the executives and what they believe in, as well as senior leaders willing to say, like, hey, look, we're in a product that's a commodity, but if you drive around and look at self-storage properties, the kind of image that comes to mind is, they're kind of sleazy, they're run down, they're not well lit, people are scared to go into them, they're not sure there's going to be a great manager there to greet them, and there might be a dog that you don't want to meet there as well. So it just wasn't a great image for anyone in that industry, and not one we wanted associated with us. So it took some campaigning a little bit internally of like, okay, who do we want to be? Like, right, do we want to be, there is a term that maybe do we want to be a slumlord, or do we want to be proud of our product and have something that can do more for the consumers as well? And so we got to a point where everyone said, okay, yeah, like, we get it. Tell us what this will take and what does it look like? And so we flew all over the country doing focus groups with customers to gather what that would look like and what mattered to them in terms of that experience. And we hired some, top-end brand retail firms and consulted with them. And then we realized we had to have a couple things. We had to have a physical property, because that is our product, and it does, at the time and still, does a lot for your brand and your marketing efforts. And then 2, we had to have something that could translate digitally too. So we had to cross both of those goals with what we did. So we took our physical assets, our facilities, which at the time were kind of a foresty green color was our primary color. Logo wasn't too different than it was today, except for color. And there wasn't a lot of supporting colors that were very well thought out, maybe some tans and beiges. But if you can picture those colors, they kind of fade into the background in terms of the city or the landscape. And so they don't do you any favors in terms of standing out for you. And so that was one, is how do we make them stand out for us more? And then two, self-storage, for whatever reason, the offices were always like a front room of a home, like walking into a living room. And,
Felt like an intrusion. Oh, hey.
Yeah. Am I actually somewhere that's doing business? And I kid you not, we laugh at some of the stuff we used to see, whether it was like homemade macrame pot holders or chips and salsa on the counter with who knows how many hands dipped in that salsa, like really inviting stuff.
Yum.
And just, you didn't feel like you were at a place that's doing business. So we're a retail organization. While this is a real estate company on one side, it's also very much a retail organization. So our facilities need to show that. So the end product was this new green, we call it wasabi green internally, but it's this very bright, vibrant green with the retail firm we partnered with. There was a lot of hours and effort put into finding that green, which has a science in it that actually there's something that attracts your eye to this green. So it was very intentional. It was bright. It was inviting. And how we used it interior-wise, exterior-wise was very thoughtful with new complementary colors. We also have in-house architectures, and so they were looking at how do we change the shape of the buildings to be more modern. There was a time when self-storage was always trying to blend in with the neighborhood because you got easier city approvals. And we're saying, okay, like we'll do that when we have to, but even then, how do we modernize the exterior to look more relevant and something that people will want to come do business with? So, you kind of think like I'm walking up to a cool Marriott or a Hyatt or something. And the retail offices feel that way too. And we walked the properties and said, man, there's like signage out the wazoo. Like, does any of this even matter? And so we walked as a customer, like, okay, what signage would I want, when and where and how, and what does it look like? So it was a pretty big process. And so that happened. And at the same time, we said, okay, how do we take that digitally? And so how do these colors work online, and do they translate well? So you have to think about both of those worlds. So it was a lengthy process. The other thing, that you might find interesting is, we couldn't do this alone. You have to get the buy-in from everybody involved. We drove it from a marketing standpoint because we saw that as the number one goal was how does this work to drive customers and revenue. But then the ops team or our operations team that manage the physical assets or the facilities on a day-in, day-out basis, we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You have to be willing to support it and keep it maintained and clean, and the store managers have to buy in, and they can't bring their macrame pot holders anymore. They got to leave the counters clean, and here's the look we need. And so there was a massive partnership, and there's some push and pull and negotiation that always happens in those situations. But we got everyone on board, and this is probably 10 to 12 years ago, and we called it our 7-year rebranding for two reasons. One, it was going to take that long to roll it all out to all of our properties because you can't do that in a year and have that expense hit to you. So it took 7 years, and we joked like, will this even be relevant in 7 years the way the world is moving? But we're 10, 12 years past, and we don't see it as needing to be changed, which is super cool. On the reverse, we see hotels, TurboTax. There's a lot of people that are copying that green. I'm not trying to claim that we were the first, but that green is out there. And within the self-storage industry, our legal team calls us, several times a year and says, hey, in Florida, XYZ is copying our green. Do you want us to go after them? Like, it's definitely caught attention in terms of a good look, I guess,
Final question. If you could write a letter to your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
End with a zinger, Gary. So maybe a couple things. I would say have fun. Like, don't lose sight of having fun. Life is way too short to not do something that you can have fun along the way. Everybody's fun is different, but find your fun and then embrace your fun. I would say be curious. Ask a lot of questions. Ask why over and over and over again. Curiosity is such a valuable skill or trait that will lead you to success regardless, personal and professional life. So be super curious. And then don't worry about the long-term path. Don't worry about I've got to get 5 promotions over 5 years, or, just get started. Just get in there and get started, and recognize that you've got to start entry level. You got to get your hands dirty and roll up your sleeves, but that'll take you places if you can be a team player and have fun along the way. If you're enjoying yourself and you can get in there and show some value, then the rest is easy. The rest is so easy.
Dana, it's such a pleasure to have you on this board. I appreciate immensely the amount of time and energy you have shared with our students, our faculty, and helping to make this a better education for our students. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right.